Hi, I'm Amanda and welcome to All Access Eats. Some of you may already know me as an actress, a filmmaker, and the daughter of Meatloaf, but what you might not know about me is that I have a passion for cooking, and I especially love cooking for my friends and family. See, I grew up traveling the world on tour with my dad, and some of my earliest childhood family meal memories come from... See, I grew up traveling the world on tour with my dad, and some of my earliest childhood family meal memories come from those that we had backstage with Dad's band and crew. And some of my earliest culinary experiences come from learning to cook those comfort foods from chefs all around the world. So I'm here to share some of those recipes and those stories with all of you. So at some point in the late 80s, I don't actually remember when, I was 6, 7, 8 years old, Dad decided that we were going to go on a very traditional, all-American family holiday, and he was going to rent an RV. I know it's hard to picture Meatloaf driving his family in an RV across the country, but we did it. And we spent a couple weeks traveling from Connecticut all the way down to Florida. We stopped in Washington, D.C. and the Carolinas, and we went to amusement parks. We did all kinds of awesome stuff. My first time going to the Smithsonian, but one of my favorite things was our stop in Baltimore, Maryland, where I had my very first crab cake. So that's what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to show you my recipe for my favorite crab cake. Let's get started. So this is my crab meat that I'm going to start with. This is 1 pound of lump blue crab meat. You can use a variety of different, some people use crab claw, different kinds of crab. This is my favorite. I like it a lot, so that's what I'm going to use. And the very first thing I did was I made sure to just pick through it a little bit, make sure that there's no shells in there or anything. But other than that, it's just crab meat. And the very first thing that I want to do is I want to season the crab first. So I am going to start by using the famous Old Bay seasoning. I know I've got a lot of international viewers, so for you guys, I'm actually going to go ahead and put a recipe for your own homemade Old Bay seasoning down in the bottom in the description. But for any Americans that have access to it, this is the stuff you want to use. This is the good stuff. And it's easier for us. That won't shut. Okay. So I'm just going to start by adding 2 teaspoons of Old Bay to my crab meat. And then next up, I'm going to also add some lemon pepper seasoning because citrus and crab just go together super awesome. So that's what we're going to do.
This is locally sourced.
Oh, it is, isn't it? And this particular lemon seasoning, this is a locally sourced lemon seasoning made right here in Lexington, Kentucky. This is Corey's Kitchen Collection. This right here, this is lemon pepper seasoning, and this is what I'm going to add to my crab because citrus and seafood they're awesome. It's like peanut butter and jelly, right? And this particular lemon pepper seasoning that I am using today, this is Corey's Kitchen. This is awesome. It's local. It's right here in Lexington, Kentucky. If you're here in Lexington or you're visiting, go down to the Julietta Market and get yourself some of Corey's. This is a Black-owned spice company. I've tried like 3 or 4 of his spices now. Super awesome. Thanks, Corey. So I'm just going to go ahead and shake some of that. You want about a teaspoon. Now I'm just going to kind of gently sort of fold this in. I don't want to really break up my crab meat too much. And now I'm just going to set this aside. So I really love crab cakes. There's a number of different recipes I could have done for this family road trip. Funnel cakes at Hershey Park or whatever. But I love crab cakes for a number of reasons. Well, so number one, I think I've talked about, much to my mom's chagrin when I was younger. She couldn't get me to eat any seafood unless it came out of the frozen food aisle. Fish sticks. And how excited was I to discover crab cakes that the seafood could be tasty and it didn't need to come in a neon yellow box. And so, yes, my mom was very happy and so was I. Crab cakes, awesome, awesome memories. And they have a really interesting history here in the US because they really are one of the true American recipes. Obviously, you know, minced fish, minced meat being fried up with some kind of grain is ancient, but crab cakes in particular came from the early colonizers were taught about crab cakes from the indigenous peoples near the Chesapeake Bay region. And we'll talk a little bit more about the history, and it's really fascinating, actually. So next up, I'm going to add half a cup of mayonnaise. So this is all my wet ingredients that I'm getting together here. Next up, we're going to add 2 eggs. Awesome. Will you rinse this real quick? Do you want to keep filming this part? Sorry. Cool. We're going to do 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire. That's going to add a nice little acidity. And 2 teaspoons of Dijon Mustard. And now I'm going to stir. Now we're just going to stir up all these wet ingredients. So I'm really fascinated by the history of crab cakes. So the very first ever written, published recipe was in The Accomplished Cook, written in 1685. It was a far cry from the crab cakes that we know and love today. It was pretty much just crab and corn flour fried in fat. Not a lot of flavor going on there, right? There might have been an egg involved, but all of the other stuff that we have now, not there. And we've got a couple other published recipes for crab cakes that were pretty much the same as The Accomplished Cook that we see pop up here and there through American history until about 1863. And then from 1863 to 1933, we don't really see any more published recipes. Interesting. We do see, however, a rise in the popularity of crab cakes, especially in that region from DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So it's really interesting because you see restaurants advertising it. You see there's even a poem written about crab cakes and the crab men of Maryland. So there's also a mention of crab cakes in Mary Sherwood's book. She was a resident of DC and she wrote a book called The Art of Entertaining. And in her book, she talks about crab cakes, but she specifically says they should only be cooked by the culinary expertise of the Black people from Maryland. Interesting, right? So, what we gather from this. So in the late 1800s, when the formerly enslaved people were free and were able to go and seek out their own financial success, many of them started their own street vendor booths. And in Maryland, especially in Baltimore, in the city of Baltimore, the most popular vendor booth was that for crab cakes. So that is the recipe that we now know and love that was finally published in the 1933 New York World's Fair Cookbook for Baltimore crab cakes, came from those freed people, right? So that's how we go from crab cakes that were just sort of cornmeal and cooked in whatever animal fat was readily available to the awesome, super flavorful crab cakes that we have today with all kinds of good stuff in them. Speaking of that good stuff, let's move on. So the next thing I'm going to add is panko. So this is the breadcrumb. This is going to help be our binding agent, right? We add panko to meatballs and meatloaf. So we're going to add some in here. Now I'm going to add about a half cup of panko. We're going to go ahead and stir that in as well. So if you know me, normally I like my stuff, I like a rough chop on my vegetables, not for crab cakes. For crab cakes, I want a really fine dice. So we're going to add in half of a finely diced red bell pepper, You could use green, yellow, orange, whatever color you like. And I'm gonna add in 1/4 of a finely diced red onion. This is half a one. I'm saving the other half for the sauce we're gonna make later. And then we're gonna zest just a little bit of lemon rind, just a little bit of MSG Umami Seasoning. And we'll go ahead and stir all that together. And then finally, we're gonna go ahead and fold in. I'm gonna take this whisk out because we wanna be gentle with our crab meat. And we're gonna go ahead and fold this awesomely seasoned crab meat in. So if you watch Schitt's Creek or if you're on social media, you've probably wondered, how do you fold in the cheese? How do you fold in anything? I'm going to show you. So when we whisk, right, demonstrate, when we whisk, we do a figure 8 really fast. It's all in our wrists. When we stir, we're going around the bowl, usually pretty fast. When we fold, we want to be really gentle. And all we're doing is bringing the bottom ingredients up and over the ingredients on top. So we're just being really nice and gentle with it, but we're making sure that everything gets mixed together. And that's how you fold. In this case, we're folding in the crab meat, not the cheese. All right, so that looks really nice to me. So for now, we're done. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. I want all these flavors to come together and I want it to firm up a bit, so it's gonna be a lot easier when we go to cook it and it won't be falling apart. I'll be back in a minute. So while my crab mixture is in the fridge, marinating and coming together, I'm gonna go ahead and make a delicious garlic lemon aioli sauce that's gonna go with the crab cakes. So to start, I've got 1/2 cup of mayonnaise. And to that, I'm going to add the juice of 1/2 lemon. And then this is about 3 cloves of garlic, really finely minced. Up next, about a teaspoon of Dijon Mustard, a tablespoon or thereabout of diced red onion, and as always, just a little pinch of umami. Stir this up real good. And then finally to this, I'm gonna add also locally sourced right here in Kentucky. This is a bourbon smoked garlic pepper from Rattlesnake Hill Farm. I don't know where they are, but it's good stuff. All right, give this a little taste. So I'm gonna go ahead and cover this, refrigerate it, and we'll put these on our crab cakes when they're done. So I've got my pan, it's nice and sizzling hot, the butter and the olive oil is going. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and wet my hands, and that's gonna help me, the crab cakes, the crab mixture from sticking to my hands. That's getting really hot. Let's turn the heat down a little bit on that bad boy. All right, and now we're just gonna take out, if you have an ice cream scoop too, you can use that. I don't like the size. I've got a really tiny ice cream scoop. I don't really like it for crab cakes. It just doesn't hold enough. So I don't know what that is, about 3 tablespoons or so, I'd say. And I just wanna get them nice and even. Looks good. Straight into the pan. And that is gonna sizzle for 3 minutes. Give it a flip. Ooh, look at that. And another 2 minutes on the other side. Here it is, my beautiful finished crab cake with that garlic lemony aioli sauce happening on top. I'm so excited to try this. That is so good. So I've got the sweetness from the crab and the bell pepper. There's a little bit of crunch in there. By the way, if you want a softer crab cake, you can totally saute your onion and bell pepper before putting them in. Just make sure you cool them down. But I like that crunch that I've got in there. It's really nice and fresh, tart from the lemon and all of those spices coming together. So good, so delish. And how easy was that, right? Don't be intimidated by crab cakes. So easy. I'm gonna go ahead and finish eating this. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time for more recipes from the road.